looking there, Sue. Okay.
Good.
Okay. All right. Hey, everyone. Welcome to CFMA's monthly webinar series. Today, CFMA and AEMP is pleased to present the Heavy Equipment Comparator, Benchmark and Improve Your Equipment ROI, which is sponsored by Foundation Software. Before we get started, I want to cover a couple of things quickly. This webinar is 75 minutes and provides 1.5 CPE credits in the field of specialized knowledge. To qualify for the credits, you need to respond to the 5 polling questions within the program. These monitor your attendance and are required by NASBA. There is a PDF available for download by clicking on the resources icon at the bottom of the screen, and a recording of today's session will be made available in your CFMA account by the end of the week. If you'd like to send a question to our presenters, please submit one by clicking on the Q&A box. Our presenters have reserved some time at the end of the session to respond to questions, and it wouldn't be a CFMA webinar without your comments in the chat. So please keep those comments coming. We can all learn from a shared experience. Now I want to take a moment to welcome and introduce our presenters and contributors. Joining us today is Carol Coronas. She's a CFO at NABCO Precast. Tim Giggy is Senior Manager with the Blattner Company and immediate past chair of AEMP. And Rich King, who is Treasurer and CFO at Slouch Incorporated. Welcome to you all, and I'll turn things over to Rich to get us started.
All right. Thank you, Sue, and welcome everybody on this Tuesday afternoon. So we're very pleased that you joined today's webinar, and we're going to be sharing a number of things with you about version 2.0 of the Heavy Equipment Comparator today. So Carol, Tim, and I will be doing most of the presentation here, but in addition to that, we also have Yvette Aubin from Ebseri Foundation, Sean Williams from Haskell Lemon, and John Gauthier from Boudreaux Pipeline, who are going to be contributing as well. When we get into the Q&A part of the session, they'll be weighing in with their experience. They've all been very active with either CFMA or AEMP and with the Heavy Equipment Comparator. So what are we going to cover today? So there definitely have been some changes for some of you who have participated in the comparator previously. So we want to define and understand the benefits of the 26 metrics that are included in the new version of the comparator and are critical for managing and improving your fleet. We are also going to go into the details of the background of this heavy equipment survey. And basically, if there's some of you who are not familiar with the comparator, we're going to give you the background on, basically how this all came together, what some of the goals are that we're trying to accomplish. A big piece of it is talking about how you and others in your company can participate and collect the metrics. So we will definitely spend some time. And we also have an appendix that Carol is going to talk about that gives you some tips of how to collect that information. And it's definitely not a single person job. We're going to talk about how you can more efficiently complete this version of the survey versus what we presented before. And lastly, we want to share as we go through the benefits that your company can obtain by participating in the comparator. So again, on the agenda, we're going to cover the new and improved comparator. We now have 3 core areas, and we're actually going to give you a live demo and have 2 sections that we're going to get into Q&A with you as well today. So we have our first poll here. And in the first poll, we're going to ask you what's your role at your company. So we want to know how many of you are CFOs and controllers, equipment managers, owners, CEOs on the operational side, perhaps in other financial or equipment role. And I know we've got some associates out here among us as well. And, basically, just trying to get an idea of the group who's on here so we can make sure we're tailoring our responses accordingly here. And it looks like we're just about done with the poll here. So about 52%, down to 50% now, are CFOs, controllers. After that, we have other financial role and associates participating. And then we have a couple of folks on the equipment side and the operations side. So thanks for your participation, in the poll there. Okay. So Next up, we've got a second poll for you here, and we want to understand what has been your involvement to date in the heavy equipment comparator. So, have you submitted results previously? Are you participating here today because you're planning on submitting your results this year? You've kind of dipped your toe in with prior webinars, or if this is the very first time you're attending any heavy equipment comparator education. All right, so we still have some votes coming in. Well, this is great. We actually have 75% of the folks that are on the webinar. This is the first education that you've attended on the HEC. And then, the remaining 25%, it's really a mix, but most of whom have attended prior webinars. So thanks so much, for participating in the polls. We will have 3 more, throughout the rest of the survey. So why are we doing this anyway? And why is it so hard to gather these equipment key performance indicators, maybe versus some of the financial KPIs or metrics that we track within our company? So first of all, I think we all know, we can't improve what you don't measure. But especially in the world of equipment, there aren't necessarily generally accepted accounting principles and balance sheets and income statements that are published commonly every month or every year as there are on the financial side. So, what we've found and in the past is some of the common KPIs related to equipment are calculated differently. People utilize different methods to collect their information, maybe a different numerator or denominator. I calculate repair and maintenance or include some items in repair and maintenance that another construction company does not include. Capturing and managing data here can be challenging because we're getting information from both the finance, operations, and the equipment side of the business. And historically, there haven't been industry benchmarks within the equipment area for us to easily capture and compare ourselves to our peers, as well as managing our progress. So really in the past, all that many of us have been able to do is manage our progress against ourselves, right? So about 5 years ago, 5.5 years ago, AMP and CFMA got together and decided we wanted to change that. We wanted to come up with a way to standardize those calculation methods so that you'd have improved consistency and you'd be able to compare your results and not be asking the question, compared to what, or how did they calculate those numbers? We wanted to establish performance benchmarks in a common vocabulary. So, when I talk about throughput, what does that mean? It's the same as when Carol or Tim talks about throughput. And then lastly, we really wanted to take the opportunity for fleet managers, for controllers, CFOs, other stakeholders to raise your profiles within your companies by having access to this information. We wanted to encourage collaboration between the fleet side and the financial side of the house, because in order to fully participate, you really need that relationship and that collaboration. Evaluate many aspects of fleet performance, not just preventive maintenance, not just financial, but all aspects of that, and be able to measure your progress and evaluate how you're doing with your fleet. So if we can identify areas that we're able to improve by comparing ourselves to others, can make us curious and give us an opportunity to make changes that are going to improve our individual fleets and our company's results. So with that being said, key performance indicators, quantifiable measure that is used to evaluate the success, in this case, of equipment or fleet performance and meeting an objective or for performance. So that's what we're trying to do with that. And then the benchmark is a standard point of reference that we're going to establish based on the survey results so that you have something that you can compare to. A little history on the timeline of the heavy equipment comparator. So again, this all started at ConExpo in 2020 with a conversation. About a year later, we had a joint kickoff meeting between the two organizations. We did an initial survey and had 57 participants, then got to ConExpo 2023. We ran another version of the survey in 2024. And now here, fall of 25, we've redesigned the survey. We've made it easier to participate. You have until November 17th to participate. And then we're going to be presenting these results at ConExpo 2026 and a number of other, webinars, conferences along the way. So one or two other things before, we transition here. So in the original comparator, those of you that are familiar with that, we had 32 key performance indicators broken down into 9 different categories, which are listed here on the left-hand side of the slide. In the updated version of the comparator, version 2.0, we've simplified it. We've broken it down into 3 different tiers: financial, fleet and operations, which those are the 2 core tiers with 16 KPIs. And then we have an enhanced metric area. If you want to go further and dig in further to your fleet, that's the 3rd tier that has 10 individual metrics. So what are we trying to do, and what's the goal here? A summary is really to encourage people to participate at the level that they're ready to participate at. So we have 8 in the financial core. If that's an area that you're comfortable with to begin your participation, that's great. Or if it's on the fleet side, or if you're comfortable with both, and that's really the base. And then from there, we want to go up and hopefully move to doing some of the enhanced metrics. And ultimately, by doing that, that's what we can do in order to achieve fleet excellence. So at this point, I am going to turn things over actually to Tim. And Tim's going to go through and take us through those fleet and operation core metrics. So Tim, you should be good to go with slide control here.
Like with all great things, there's lag in the system and stuff like that. Could you bump it ahead, Rich? Hopefully it'll catch up with us here in a minute.
There we go.
All right, appreciate that. All right, so jumping in here, as Rich kind of mentioned, fleet and operations core. A lot of this really to establish a bit of a common language, a common way of looking at this, and get everybody kind of working from that same position as we move things forward. So won't belabor reading the list here. We'll move to the next one. Nothing like technical difficulties, right? So equipment utilization, looking at it from an hours-based aspect. The question always comes down to, right, is my equipment being used? It's on a project, serviced up, ready to go. But to quote Mike Borster, if the equipment is working, it's an asset. But if it's not working, it's a liability. Right? We didn't go out and invest the money we did in all this equipment just to have it parked, waiting for a great day to go do some things. We wanted out there, making some money, doing some things to get us ahead. So with that, I mean, we're really, and just looking at the math of it here, looking at the working hours versus the planned, overall planned hours that it should be working, and hence coming by utilization in it. Fairly a baseline metric, but very critical to understanding, are you getting what you paid for out of those items? Next one, please. All right. I'd like to jump in here with a poll on that. Wondering if you track idle time and how you track it. So a little tricky. Oh, good. Old school people. Love that. We've often had some discussions in and around this. Do you have to have computer systems and all this to do it? And man, it makes life a lot easier. Don't get me wrong. I've been doing this pen and paper and through Excels for a lot of years. So, good to see that I'm not the only one that still believes in Stone Age tactics. So, excellent. So we got most everybody in on this. So, yeah, looks like there we go in that poll. Broke the poll. We have 16% that are monitoring through OEM telematics, another 17% through third party, 19% using that paper and pencil. Love that. And then 48% are not monitoring your idle. So, boy, you make a sad planet doing that. looking at idle, right? So utilization looks good. Equipment's out there. We're seeing hours getting put on that iron. The big question is now, is it actually doing anything, right? So pretty easy to start a key walk away, make sure we're accruing hours on that machine. Well, obviously a portion of you aren't looking for that. So I highly recommend we do. But what do we gain from doing that, right? It if it's on site, not doing anything but burning fuel, creeping closer to PM, and using a valuable warranty. Also, it's detrimental to the machine itself, and honestly, the environment, right? So, we bought the machine, we've got it fueled up, we've got it out there running, and now it's not actually being productive doing things. So, um, let's look at ways we measure that. So let's if you're using a telematics or something like that, often it breaks that down for you. But that the core of the measurement is looking at your idle hours divided by your total hours is going to give you that percentage. Inversely, you can look at this as if you know your total hours by your hour meter reading for that period of time, and you know how many hours were charged, maybe to say that time card. You have your operators logging in and logging out. You're going to be able to get this differential there. Um, the methodology, as long as you're consistent, there's nothing wrong with that, right? You can benchmark against yourself and continue to grow and to learn in that space. We give the example here of about a 19.46% idle. Small bit of caution on this one is if as those that are tracking this and really looking at getting them numbers down, zero really is unobtainable. The only way to get to zero is not to ever start the machine. And we all know if the machines don't run, they're not doing the work, we're not creating revenue. So, just the simple little things. A person gets off it, parks up and gets down to take lunch, or we're doing an operator change or anything like that, that's going to accrue idle time. You shift gears on a unit from forward to reverse often, that'll accrue seconds of idle time if it's being measured hyper accurately through computer systems. So let's keep hoping my controls will start to work, Rich. Let's just jump to the next one, please. Thank you. Next one on our list, we're looking at equipment damages. So we have the equipment out there working. We're getting the job done. That equipment is earning its keep. At this point, what can go wrong, really? Well, stuff happens. A shiny new excavator is a dented door, and that is going to dip into your profits. It's got to come from somewhere, right, to make that repair. Happens every day to everyone, but is my company doing a great job of mitigating the bad things that can happen? Or do I need to invest in training and maybe additionally in safety to get my damages cost under control? This is a real thing, right? I mean, it is something that it erodes your margins. It gets in that backside, and gets in. If you're not keeping track of it, it will make you question, how did we go wrong in that job? We bid it well, we did all these things right. Where did we go wrong? Well, let's start tracking damage, right? So easy metric on this way we're looking at doing these is comparing those total damage dollars to your total man hours. Gives you a pretty simple bit of math and an easy to get a hold of ratio. But the nice thing about this is we look at quite a few of these. It's not always, not sometimes it's not, am I doing the best I can? Is what kind of company do I keep? We'll find in a lot of these that this is one that it's an unfortunate reality, but it's there. But knowing that, what other people in the same sector as I am, and they're doing right about the same, or maybe a little better, a little worse, but at least you're not out there on an island, right? So try that next one. So now that our asset has been working for a while, they're going to need a little TLC in the form of maintenance. So knowing what percent of your work orders are preventative maintenance versus all the other work orders that you may have is a great way to see if you are planning the work and hoping it makes it until the, or you are to see if you're planning the work versus hoping it makes it till the weekend. It's often things, they break. It's not you expect it never to happen, but it does. But the reality is quite a bit of this can be planned. You can build data sets and start getting predictive analytics in there to see when it's going to happen. So I've been knowing they do, grid inspections, effective maintenance practice, they can give you the insight to health of your assets and allow you to control a bit of the chaos. And honestly, it's a great bit of measure to see how preemptive are you, or are you're looking at your maintenance department. Are they keeping a good tabs on what's going on? Are they getting in front of these things as they happen? So, and as you'll find, all these are really quite simple. Highly encourage everybody to go out and download the Excel as you're going to move your way into the comparator and do these things. It gives you some nice tooling and helps you kind of see how these are pulled together with quite a bit more definition than I'm giving you here right now. But really, you're looking at your preventative events versus your others. You're fine, Rich. Go right ahead. Everybody probably read that already anyways. So looking at the next thing, right? So yeah, we've established we've got the equipment running, we're monitoring our idle, we're checking our damages. Now we've got all these preventative things out there and scheduled, but are we completing them on time? You know, it's a bit of a balancing act, right? Too soon, and you're throwing money out the window, and doing them too late, and you risk highly expensive, very costly component failures. So trying to hit that right mark, that's a big deal. Just to share a little story from my past on this, very early on in my management career, I had the opportunity to run a fleet for a rouseabout company in Wyoming. And in my first week there in discovery and kind of figuring out how they were doing things and whatever else it is, I see this calendar on the wall and inquire a little bit about this. And a lot of credit to the folks that had pulled this together, because they had managed to get 100+ assets balanced in this calendar. So they all got attention twice a year. And that's how they ran everything, was based on that. A little digging into the actuals and where everything sat on there to kind of see where everything sat. And some of these machines were running 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. That's over 1,000 hours in that 6 month span. And then other units, are between their oil changes. They're just not getting the attention they need. Most oil changes are done at 250 or 500. And other machines hadn't ran in 2 or 3 years, yet they had fresh oil in them. They got a new set of batteries every 6 months. We were just literally taking money and throwing it out the window. So achieving this compliance, it's low, I would say low hanging fruit. Kind of as I was thinking about this year, it's low hanging fruit that's been picked, peeled, served up on a nice silver platter. It's a very easy win to go after this and then get kind of your compliance in order. And it's a pretty simple task, right? I mean, it's looking at your work orders completed on time, uh, divided by your total overall work orders to give you that, of your preventative work orders to give you that task. So, and we've even went and then gave you definitions in there of what completion looks like. I mean, we want to see it done within 1 week, 10 metered hours, or 100 miles by the odometer of that task being actually due. Not quite as easy as it sounds, but it's very obtainable. Go to the next one, Rich. So let's look at our percentage of our man hours charged to work orders. So your technicians are a big investment, right? Often, if you dig into it, they're some of the highest paid folks you probably have in your company, at least for hourly. And we invest in that because we invested a lot in our machines, and we want to make sure that we're getting everything we can out of those. So knowing where their efforts are being applied, it opens the door a little bit to understanding, are you doing the right thing by your fleet? Do you have the right amount of mechanics? I mean, how do you compare with everybody else? Everybody always wants to know, am I overstaffed, understaffed? Am I really hitting these numbers right? This is really going to make sure that your technician dollars are there. You've got them focused in the right area, that you're kind of in track with people doing similar things to you are. Really, quite a simple calculation, just looking at our work order hours versus our total technician hours. That's going to give us give us that percentage of man hours that are charged to those work orders. So looking at labor factor. So now we're going to bring together some of our equipment data and a bit of our technician data and kind of crash it together a little bit. And by bringing these together, it's going to give us a good view of our overall health and reliability of our equipment and our maintenance program, and see, are we on the right track? Again, we're doing all these to benchmark against our peers in the industry and others out there to see really kind of where we stack up as we look at all that. One thing I will say on this is it will give you a great view of the larger picture of health, but it doesn't do a great job of giving you that targeted view of where it is. You very much get, this collage of, is it somewhere out there? But by dialing in this ratio or focus on percentages, it's going to start again as you look at, your peers in the industry. Are we stacking up? Are we on the right track with those? And or are we in good company? If we feel that we're doing poorly, maybe we're not. Maybe we're doing right, just like everybody else is. We slide to the next one, Rich. So now we can focus this a little bit. So we're going to look at our down events per 1,000 hours, and we're going to take a look at that old rusty excavator we've been keeping out back for a while there. Hopefully this isn't anybody's machine out there. If it is, I do apologize. So But with this one here, this does, like I said, looking at our down events per 1,000 hours, we get to start to focus, because now we start saying, hey, is my ratio off on there? Am I seeing a lot of down events per hours work? And if you are, it allows you to, it tells you, hey, you know what, maybe you need to take a deeper dive. Let's get in there and let's find where some of these things are, and start to focus that needle. If you've got the tooling kind of built to get this on a larger scale, you can definitely focus it. You know, just make sure, as we look at the tooling and how this stacks out, that we've got the those hour ratios sorted out right, and that we're doing the math on that. Looking at this overall, all of our items here, you got to kind of ask ourselves, right, is this all that we need? And to be honest, I'm a bit biased on this after a 30+ year career in equipment and equipment maintenance. Yeah, it'll do that to you, right? So you think this is all you really need to look at is, am I keeping it greased, fueled, and ready to go? And are those guys taking care of it? It's really not. We need to compile this core bit of information with a lot of our financial information to really make a robust layer of reporting as we look at those. And I'm going to go ahead and pass it to Carol now to help discuss some of those financial metrics that we need to dial in with this as well.
Hi, everyone. I know that when we did do the poll, we saw that a lot of people are here from the financial world. So a lot of these things will really be familiar to you. So I know there's a little redundancy in there. So now I think we're caught up on the slides. So this is basically the financial core. And we'll talk a little bit later about how we have tiered this. And so in order to get some of the products, and we'll talk again later on these, you will need to fill out 5 of these 8. And so I think if you look at these, you'll find that they are pretty easily attainable. So we're just going to kind of walk through some of them. And one thing that I really like, when you see how I've kind of color coded this, there are a lot of the things that you can determine once, and the spreadsheet that Rich is going to work us through later will show that. So like in this case, you'll only determine the equipment repair and maintenance costs once, and then you can use those throughout a lot of these metrics. So as you're looking at this, it might at first look like you're going to have to go and gather a lot of information, but some of it you're only gathering once, and then you can use it several times. So the first one is equipment repair and maintenance costs as a % of revenue. So this is super simple. Once you've determined your equipment repair and maintenance costs, you just divide them by the total revenue. We do have metric definitions. And when you look at that, when you go in to start your survey, there's a place that says metric definitions, and you'll get a really good definition for the equipment repair and maintenance costs, for example, and a lot of these other things that you're working through. So we did try to make it as easy as we can so that you can go in and look at it, and you can review it and make sure that what you're reporting meets the definitions. The next one is one of my favorites because it really helped me zero in on some things that I was really kind of fighting with. And it's very similar to the above metric, but instead of dividing using your total revenue, you're using your throughput. And throughput is defined as revenue minus subcontract costs and materials costs. And the reason I'm saying that this was sort of a light bulb to me is because the company I used to work for, the bridge builder, our revenue could be all over the place, sort of depending on what we decided to subcontract out. And our results were quite a bit different if you looked at it from a revenue standpoint, or if you looked at it if we took out the subcontracting component. So I think this will be a really good metric for you guys to look at and to measure and to compare yourself. It does offer like easier comparisons because you're basically just evening everything out when you look at throughput, which is revenue minus subcontract costs minus materials costs. Then the next one is the equipment repair and maintenance costs as a % of construction equipment replacement value. So this is trying to give you basically how much money are you spending as it relates to what is the replacement value of the equipment. I always look at, should we decide to repair or should we decide to replace? And this really helps you look at, you want a healthy balance here. You don't want to be spending way too much money as it relates to the estimated replacement value, and just knowing that you have a really good balance there. Again, you're using the same thing that you've already calculated, the equipment repair and maintenance costs, and then you will need to try to determine what is the estimated replacement value. The next one here is the equipment repair and maintenance labor. So these two are really looking at the labor that you spent. So you divide the equipment repair and maintenance labor by your total construction revenue. So this is just a way of zeroing in on the labor component. Again, you've already determined the repair and maintenance cost. You just take the labor component of that, and then you have your revenue figure also. And so these are really easy things for financial people to gather. And if you're on the equipment management side, this is a really good and easy ask of your financial people. So please don't hesitate. In fact, we encourage working together, the equipment people and the finance people and the operations people. The more you can get to work together, the better. Number 13 is equipment repair and maintenance labor as a percentage of equipment repair and maintenance costs. So again, you've already determined your equipment repair and maintenance costs, and this is just showing you how much of that is labor. That's something that a lot of people really look at. You'll need to determine, do you have the right number of technicians? If you're outsourcing a lot of your repair, also look at that. What is the labor component? Then this is also one of my personal favorites, and that's why I have highlighted it in red, and we affectionately call this RONA. So basically, it stands for Return on Net Assets. So you'll divide your net income before taxes by your net working capital plus your net book value of the fixed assets. This again is something that really comes right off of your financials. It's an easy one to get. And it's basically going to show you what is your return on your net assets. And I know there are a lot of places that people can put money. You want to know what is your return on the net assets. And of course, in the heavy construction world, it's going to be higher. You're going to have a lot more assets that you're really going to be looking at. So having this heavy equipment comparator to be able to compare yours to other people that are in construction, in heavy construction, doing work similar to yours is very important. I had a surety company once say, hey, you're way out of line here. And I was able to bring up and support actually our position in that we were in heavy construction, and hey, we're going to have a lot more assets. So I think this is one where the comparator can really give you a lot of helpful information. The next one is capital expenditures to free cash flow. And I know that this sounds like a lot, but when you really get down and you start to figure it, there's not a whole lot really to go in and gather. So you're going to divide your capital expenditures, which there's a definition in the metrics. We all know we have to do CapEx budgets every year. So you just divide your capital expenditures by by EBITDA, basically. Earnings before income taxes, depreciation, and amortization. So I know that's something that typically we look at anyway as a company. So you just go and you find those two things and you divide it, and there you go. You have your capital expenditures to free cash flow. Actually, the free cash flow calculation is something that especially investors, owners, bankers, a lot of times really want to look at. So again, I think this one is pretty easy. The next one is equipment cost components as a percentage of total equipment cost. So this is just basically dividing up your total repair and maintenance costs and into what are they, or your total equipment costs, basically. So as we know, the equipment costs, they're made up of ownership, repair and maintenance, and fuel. So this is just showing you how those are divided. And again, a very, very good way to compare your company to other companies. I know sometimes on the ownership side, we may have fully depreciated an asset or things like that. So you may have more repair and maintenance costs if you have an older fleet. But just looking at this and what you're doing, it'll tell you a lot. When you compare it with others, it tells you even more. So this is a poll, and if you were listening to what I just said, you'll all be able to get this one exactly 100% right. Okay, looking at it, definitely we've got in the high 90s here who were listening or may have already known this, but the components or the categories of the equipment costs or ownership costs, repair and maintenance costs, and fuel. So thank you very much, and I will turn it back over to Rich and Tim.
All right, thanks, Carol. And hopefully I've got control here again. We'll see. There we go. So as you can see, basically in those two core areas that we had of the fleet and operations and also the finance side, we've tried to basically cover all aspects of fleet operation, really from acquisition through operation, maintenance, and ultimately disposal. If you think about it on the fleet and the ops side, they're very much focused on those two middle sections, the maintenance and the operation side, and that's where those metrics are really focused upon. On the financial side, it's kind of spread a little more evenly throughout, and we're really looking at more of the financial results. And, really we're looking at the financial metrics in one of two ways, right? It's either looking at repairs and repair activity as a measure either of our overall, enterprise activities for the company or based on our fleet activities. So that's one way that we look at those financial metrics. And then the second way is it's a measure of how we're investing in our capital, in our people, in our materials, in our parts, that type of thing. So really, we're trying to cover, all the bases through the equipment life cycle and also cover each area, from the finance, the operations and fleet metric side. So it's definitely a team sport. So for our financial folks out there, we know metrics 9 to 16 are going to be easier for you to calculate. You'll need to tap in help from the fleet side. And again, with AMP, CFMA partnering together, hopefully that's something that, you can do. And then in addition to that, one other important thing to mention, all of this is handled by the same company that is administering the financial benchmarking survey, Industry Insights. It's all kept confidential. So I know there's some companies that are concerned about sharing financial results, but I think, you should be comfortable that it's Industry Insights, the same company that's doing the financial benchmarker. So with that being said, again, we would hope that, you would look at what you're comfortable with and start with, the financial core as well as the fleet and ops core. If you're interested in going further and wanting to get into some additional metrics that are going to analyze, your results further, this is where we get into the enhanced metrics. And, using kind of the old 9 categories that we had, you can see it kind of crosses a lot of different spots, anywhere from more on preventive maintenance and scheduling. So like Tim said, he just touched the surface there. If you want to go deeper in those areas, or you want to look at labor efficiency, how well you're deploying your labor, going deeper on utilization or reliability, how reliable is our fleet? If it's not, that's going to impact our productivity out in the field. So if you want to go further, these are the advanced metrics. We've got a total of 10 of them in the enhanced area, 17 up through 26. We're not going to go through these individually, but Tim and I each picked 2 of our favorites here to go through. So I'm going to start first, and I'm going to cover 2, and then I'm going to turn it over to Tim, and he's going to cover 2 of his favorites. So utilization is certainly one of the most important metrics from my view, and one that we focus on, very much on a weekly basis. But With most of what we do, we're doing it based on hours. So whether it's a dozer that's $120 an hour, an excavator that's $150 an hour, a skid loader that maybe is $35 an hour, we're weighting everything equally. Metric 18, which is fleet utilization dollar-based, starts to now weight the bigger equipment more heavily. So, if you're a marine contractor and basically you've got a barge or a crane, that's going to weight that more heavily than some support equipment. For our paving contractors, that paver that has that higher cost, it's going to weight that more heavily than, the roller that is on the job. So, in this metric, we're going through and we're looking at charge rate per hour, and we're basically looking at what were the actual charges for the year based on what we charged out versus what our target or desired utilization was and the total possible job charges. And we divide that out and we get a percentage, just like we do when we look at hours. However, this is weighted based on the dollar value of the equipment. And then the second one that I like, Tim shared down events per hour. Mean time between failure is another way to really measure reliability and look at, breakdowns on projects and, how well, we can maintain our fleet and minimize those emergency repairs or those breakdowns is really going to be critical as far as, keeping our field folks, productive and working on, the work that they're doing every day. So in this scenario, we're basically taking the number of hours that we've reported or metered during a period of time. So if in the course of the year, we have 80,000 hours that our fleet ran. And if during that entire time, we identified 94 breakdowns, that would mean that we take 80,000 hours divided by those 94-hour breakdowns, and 851 hours is the mean time between failure, meaning every 851 hours we run, we're going to have one failure. So again, depending on, the size of your fleet, that could be a really good number, or it could be really a not so good, number. But, if this was a, much lower number here, obviously that's a negative result. And we want to be able to compare how we're doing, to others that are doing the same type of work that we are. So I'm going to turn it over to Tim for any additional comments he has on the enhanced metrics, and so he can share two of his favorites in this tier.
Yeah, no, and this is, I think we get into this hand stuff. It's, I think a lot of us really, we focus in on these KPIs. We'd really drive on them. KPI nerds might be a term we could use, but these ones they're taking it to that next little tier. Yeah, they're a little more difficult to gain the data to track, but the value goes up quite a bit as we look at these, overall. And this is one that it's hard in how we define it, but it's so valuable when we look at it, when we look at measuring the percent of rework hours, which is as defined. It's a task repeated within 176 metered hours that is not scheduled to be performed within the same time frame. So we did it, we're out there, and now it happened again. What we gain from this may be as simple as that we have bad parts or some other issues. Maybe the machine has reliability issues. Maybe we're not properly training our people, or we're lacking in that area. Or maybe we've got a few individuals that are maybe not function or performing at the level we want. Regardless of what the dynamics are of it, it's really great to know that if you're reinvesting money back into things, because that says, hey, you know what, I need to take a focus and look at this. So once you have the flags in place for the proper mechanism to identify your rework, very easy to complete. Beyond that, you look at all your total hours that you've spent doing tasks, the repetitive tasks or the rework, divided by the total maintenance hours, gives you a rework percentage. Now, like I said, make sure they're not scheduled tasks that are done. That there may be something that you have to do every 50 hours. That would not be rework because it's already scheduled to be there. The next one on my list is emergency work order hours as a percentage of total maintenance hours. You can look at it this way: firefighters do not want to be out there fighting fires; they prefer to prevent them. As we look at our maintenance tasks and what we're doing there, we're in the same thing, right? We want to prevent the breakdowns. We don't want to get the pat on the back for having fixed the most broken things in a year. Breakdowns on the job are costly. They impact our schedule. They keep us from getting things done. So we want to make sure that we're applying that properly as it goes. So with that is really, again, and both these metrics require that you have some flags, identify them in your system. These are not easy metrics to track. But by identifying these emergency work order hours and dividing them by our total work order hours, now we can understand how much of our time is spent running to the fire versus, taking care of things before they break. Honestly, onboarding a new employee today and had this discussion around, do we fix this now or do I wait until it fails? Well, we have an opportunity to fix it now when it doesn't interrupt operation. If we wait till later, it will interrupt operations and it will cost us double in lost production or things like that. So, um, having a good path to this, it really says, hey, am I planning my work? Am I properly focusing on that? It's a great way to measure that overall.
Thanks, Tim. And I think we're going to pause right now. We've thrown a lot of information at you in about the first 44 minutes here. So, Yvette, do we have any questions up to this point that we want to go through?
Hi, everyone. We actually did have one question, and it was put into the Q&A, and Tim did answer it. But I think it was a good question, maybe to get it out loud, and Tim can maybe elaborate. So the question was, is the preventative maintenance and predictive maintenance calculation based on hours?
So the way we put this forth is on work orders, and it has to do with the level of difficulty. It's a lot easier to bucket your work orders and understand where they sit. We just talked about in advanced metrics of focusing on hours and getting down that realm. Most people starting off are definitely going to be looking at total work order counts as a way to get there. That said, ratios being what they are, if you're really good at tracking hours and you have a very concise system, you may be able to get there. As I put in the answer there, I do discourage that. There's a lot of opportunity for you to miss something in that, get a little bit off track, and it compounds very quickly when looking at these, especially when you're aggregating total hours. So recommended on this is look at your total count of productive work orders within your system versus your total count, your overall count of all work orders, and doing the measurements there. It'll give you a lot crisper results as you go through it.
Thanks, Tim. That's all we have for questions right now. Again, the Q&A is open, and it will be open through the end of the webinar. You can please drop your questions in there.
Sounds good. Thanks, Yvette. So please, again, as Yvette said, feel free to ask questions. We will have another Q&A segment here at the end, but now I think we got something exciting to show you between Carol and I. We're going to give you kind of a little bit of a tour and a sneak peek of the survey itself and going to the website and completing it, and also the benefits and the different types of reports that you can receive. So when you go to hecomparator.com, this is the screen that you're going to come to. And at that point, you'll enter your username, to log in, or your email to register. And then, once you do, you will come to, to a screen, which I'll show you in a moment here, and you'll then be able to enter the survey. I did want to talk about one thing real quick before we jump over to the website. And you will see there are going to be a pretty good number of demographics that we ask you for. And there's a reason for that. Our company, we're a site work contractor, a little over $100 million, here in Pennsylvania. So if we're trying to compare our utilization and, our operation to a company that does different type of work that maybe is, paving focused, heavy highway focused, and they're in Arizona, that's not going to be the best comparison. There's some things that it doesn't matter, right? But there's other things that it does. So we're going to ask for some information so that we can give you the best results as far as comparing yourself to other companies just like you. So that's really the purpose, of what you're asking for, or why we're asking for that information. So at this point, I am going to jump over to the site. And when we come in and we go in and we enter the survey, this is the web page that we're going to get to. So Carol had mentioned metric definitions. By clicking here, we basically can get all those metric definitions and the details that you are able to go through and, see all of the information that you need to gather. And you can actually see by hovering, for example, over equipment damage cost, in this case, you'll be able to see specifically what our definition is of an equipment damage cost, or total man hours per the OSHA log. Hovering over any of those items, you're able to see that information. So that's really important as far as, preparing. You're able to manage. So if I'm going to go in and put the financial information in, and Tim is, our VP of fleet, and Tim's going to go in and basically handle those metrics, I can set up who has access and, allow both of us to get in there. When we come down here, for those of you who have one location, your location is just going to be headquarters, and you're going to put in one set of results. But if you're out there and you're a larger company, you've got multiple locations across the US, and you want to put in different locations, different regions, you're able to do that too by adding a location. As we mentioned here, fleet operations core, you can toggle these on and off as far as what you're planning on participating in, completing metrics for. And, as Carol mentioned, completing 5 in any category, you're able to get the benefits and access to, the information that's available from the survey in that category. Certainly, we encourage you to complete as many as you can. If you can get 5 in fleet and ops core, 8 in the financial core, and you can complete 2 in the enhanced, the more information that we can get, the more participation, the better the results, for everybody. So, if we go into the demographics section, just log back in here. And this is actually what you will see going into the survey. So in the demographics section, just really quickly, designating your industry, the size of your company, number of employees, those are some of the things that we ask. We'll ask you your NAICS codes, your estimated replacement value. These are all things, or a number of these things, you're going to see as being available in the reports in order to compare yourself against other companies like yourselves. When we come into the fleet and the operations core, you'll see that all the information is here for each individual metric. We've got an example there. And you have the ability, I can either, if these are my numbers, I can actually just go right ahead and say, hey, 59.3% is my actual percentage. Or if I click on this calculator symbol, I'm now able to come in and I can input my, working hours, 22,247, and I can put in my planned hours of 37.5. And when I go to save that, it's going to do the calculation for me, which is really nice. The other thing you can do, anywhere where there's this little informational dot, if I come over that, it should give me a definition. There we go. It's not cooperating, but trust me, it will, there it is. It will give you, planned hours. Here's the definition of what that means. By going through, you may choose to go through and just input your actual numbers. The other thing we're going to ask you for is an actual confidence level. Hey, I calculated an actual number. It's an approximate number, plus or minus 20%. It's my best guess. If it's unknown, please don't submit a result at that point, or, if you don't have a good confidence level with what you're submitting. So, you can fill out and complete, the 8 fleet and operational metrics here. And then if you're done with that section, you can mark it as complete, you can save it. And then from there, you would go on to, to the next section. So I could then come in, go into the financial core and go through the same process of completing, completing this information by filling in my repair and maintenance costs. So if I had 200,000 in repair and maintenance costs, and I had 10 million of construction revenue, that would save that information for me. And then, as Carol mentioned, you can see once I fill in information, it's going to carry it to all the other metrics that include that info. So here, now if I'm trying to calculate throughput, now I just need to put in my material costs and my subcontract costs. And now it's going to go ahead and it's going to calculate the throughput. So that is, how you would go about, going through this. And that's one way to basically complete the comparator. The other thing that you can do is we have this download Excel workbook. So if we go ahead and we click on that, and if we were to download the Excel workbook, which I've already done here, we then have the ability to go through and we have a set of instructions here for you. And then you've got the same information, but on individual tabs in Excel. So you can now complete, of course, I'm a member of both AEMP and CFMA, and maybe I'm a NAPA member, you can complete that information, very similar as far as how this is organized. In the spreadsheet, you hover over anywhere that has the triangle, it gives you the information. You fill the information in, it's going to carry through. The other thing it's going to tell you is if this information is used in more than one metric, it is going to tell you where it's used. So for example, construction revenue is used in both metrics 9 and 12. Throughput is used in metric 10. So on the financial side, as you go through and complete this, you're going to input the information into the different segments. And then down at the bottom, it's going to give you all the results for the metrics. So, personally, and I know Yvette's already completed the survey. Certainly, Yvette, if you want to jump in and comment here. But personally, for me, in the past, when I've completed this and this time, I intend to use the Excel workbook. It's just easier to kind of gather that info and do the calculations. Yvette, anything you'd like to add there?
Yeah, I think it's also easier to use the workbook when you're collaborating. Let's say I'm the CFO, so if I'm collaborating with my fleet manager, it's easier for us to parse out the workbook. And so it's definitely a really good tool.
Again, that's something, thanks to that, that's something that, again, for that collaboration or working together, like, I have a time scheduled, our fleet and logistics coordinator and I are meeting next week. We have time set aside. We're each bringing, the information that we've each talked about, we're being responsible for. We're going to meet and we're going to fill out the spreadsheet together. And then from there, the nice thing is, once you complete the spreadsheet, you have the ability to upload the completed workbook. So you then don't have to go in and type in any of your information into the individual sections. You can just upload the Excel workbook. So that can be, a very efficient way to do it. If if you want to go through and assign sections and complete it on here, or you don't want to put upload the workbook, you can certainly do that as well. But, that is a quick overview of the site. Again, I think it's pretty straightforward as far as the functionality here. And certainly you have the ability to contact industry insights for any help with the site or if there's any issues on the site. So at this point, I am going to pass it back to Carol. And she is going to take you through what do you get by participating in this survey.
Great. Thank you, Rich. This is one of my very favorite parts of the heavy equipment comparator. I have studied a lot of written reports, tried to compare my companies since I've worked for different types of companies through the years. And it's very difficult to get some information that you can really compare yourself with others. And so what I really like about the heavy equipment comparator is that it does allow you to do that. And we'll go in and we'll look at the peer group comparison report. We'll look at the company report. And they're very, very good at doing just that, helping you to compare yourself with similar companies. So this is what's in it for you and your company simply for submitting your data. And as we've gone through, actually accumulating, gathering that data isn't all that difficult to do. A lot of the metrics will apply to, a lot of the things that you're gathering will apply to several metrics. So simply by submitting data, you get a lot. And I just can't tell you how much you get for just doing that. You get the executive report, which is an executive summary. You get one company report, which will go over. That alone is worth the time it takes to submit your information. You get one peer group comparison report, 50% discount on the heavy equipment comparator PDF, which is a really comprehensive document, and then 50% off any additional peer group comparison reports that you want to purchase. So the pricing information is on the website. If you go to hecomparator.com and go to About, it does have pricing information there if you're interested in looking at that. But you get these things simply for going in and submitting your data. As you can see here, it says that you will need to complete at least 5 metrics in the core, financial core, fleet and operations core, and or enhanced metrics to receive it. So if you're able to complete 5 metrics in either of those categories, you'll receive all of the information that's related to those categories, to that core. You'll get all of that information. If you can't complete at least 5 in one of those, but you can complete at least 5 overall, then you'll be able to get some information also and get some free products. You'll be able to get the company comparison report. And it really, as I mentioned, is very, very, very valuable. So I would definitely recommend that you do this just so that you can get the free products. And then if you want to, or you can also purchase them. So I think that's very, very good in order to do that. You're getting a lot for just a little, in my opinion. And I wanted to show you some of these reports just so that you can see them yourself. So on this report, which is the company comparison report, this is one section of it. What you'll end up getting is your company's results. You'll see those on the far left side, and then it will be pre-configured with information that you can compare yourself with. So this is already pre-configured and it's returned to you in this format. It provides invaluable insights without requiring any manual calculations. It's just provided to you, and it includes a confidential qualitative assessment of your company's performance. And so that's what this is. So it'll tell you in each of the metrics how you're doing. And so you don't even have to really dig down deeply into it to see, but it will tell you whether you're in the lower 25%, might be something you want to work on, or investigate further, because as we know, any KPIs, you can't just say it's a one size fits all, but that tells you, hey, look at this. You're not in line with the others. Look at it and see if it makes sense for your company. Then you see the next categories are middle 50% of the reported figures, and then strong, congratulations. So it gives you a really good snapshot already prepared for you that you can just you can use like right away. I wanted to show you also this interactive peer group comparison report. And so it's kind of hard to see these, but if you go in, you can look at it. When Rich went into the heavy equipment comparator website earlier, he clicked on survey, and on the right side, you'll see reports. And so that's where you'll go in and you can run reports such as this. And the comparison choices, as you see here, a lot of them are related to that demographic information that Rich talked about. So you can choose to compare yourself with the best in class, top 10%, top quartile, the primary industry being like, are you heavy highway, or are you more heavy construction, or are you more, site work, or, water treatment plants, or whatever. It's your primary industry. Then your revenue size, geographic region, your number of employees, revenue subcontracted, your NAISC codes, your repair and maintenance labor outsourced, because sometimes if you look at the labor figures, then it'll look a little different if you're primarily outsourced. Your labor affiliation, if you're union or non-union or both. Your fleet type, whether it's primarily on or off road, and then the training hours. So it really does provide you a lot of categories where you can compare yourself with companies that are very similar to yours. I know Rich and I have had some conversations. He's in Pennsylvania, I'm in Texas. We can work year round. So our figures look a lot different just because of that. And there are a lot of other things that can make your figures look different from other people based on these categories primarily. And then this is what it ends up looking like. So your information would be here, and then the different categories that you've chosen will be here. And so it basically will produce this report that you can download to an Excel, or you can download to a PDF, and you can build reports. You can even, if you want to, put in some like different scenarios, like what if you had reported these figures, which is where you might want to be, or a different segment. You can go in and sort of play with this. So this is really one of my favorites also. And then this is talking a little bit about the PDF, and I know you guys may be tiring a little bit that we've been talking primarily about the survey and how to get information for it and what it can give to you. But the reason we did that is because we got a lot of feedback from people who were looking at it and thinking it was going to be really too difficult to pull together the information. So we've tried to simplify it. And we tried to just make this webinar be, hey, if you're beginning, or even if you've done it once and maybe you haven't gotten through everything, that this is just a guide to do that. But the heavy equipment comparator report, the PDF, is very comprehensive. So it will be like all of the information that's collected, along with a lot of really good commentary. So it'll include things like how you can use the metrics, basically what we saw, what the best in class is, what the top quartile is. So it's some really, really good information for you as a company, and also if you deal with clients. It's a lot of really good information to share with them as well. So definitely look at this PDF. It's also just, I keep saying everything's my favorite because it is. When you go to read it, it'll give you a lot of really good information. Okay, here is poll number 5. We'd just like to know, if you'll take a minute and answer this: what is the likelihood that you will complete the heavy equipment comparator after attending this webinar? And while I'm saying complete it, I just mean go ahead and fill it out and give us what you can. So I'm glad to see that a lot of people were very likely, and maybe you will. For those of you who are not likely to, we certainly would appreciate the opportunity to, discuss with you any questions that you might have, or any way that we might be able to make it easier for you. So thank you very much for filling that out. We appreciate that. Okay. So this is one thing I wanted to tell you too. We are having a Here to Help session coming up on Friday. And you can see the time here. If you would like to attend that, you can register for it. The link is here, right here. I think somebody was also going to put it in the chat for us. It was in your email that you had on Monday about what's going on this week within CFMA. So it will just be an interactive session where you guys can ask any questions that you might have, even how to get started. We're here to help is basically what we're saying there. I do want to point out also that at the end of this, we're going to go through Q&A, but at the end of this PDF that you have in the resources, there are also some tips and tricks. We'll just go to it really quickly and then come back right here. Tips to gather information, and just some of the things that we have found were really, really good practices. Okay, we're going to go to Q&A now and see if you guys have any questions. Yvette?
There are currently no questions in the chat or in the queue.
Well, I'm gonna go ahead and ask a question for our participants, if you're willing. If you are in the maybe category or not likely category, if you wouldn't mind just dropping in a couple of words why why you're maybe or not likely, or what would make it easier. Because again, as Carol said, we're really looking, to try to make this much easier, to try to reduce the amount of time. And I think, we've done it as far as being able to, lower the barriers to participation. So if you do have any feedback for us and you're willing to kind of, put into the chat your thoughts on that, that would be great. Or again, if you're more comfortable giving the feedback through like Sue at CFMA, you can do that too. So far, I don't see anybody taking me up on my offer, but that's,
So we have a
I
question
agree.
about how many respondents typically participate in the survey. Rich, I know that you probably have your hand on that pulse more than any of us.
Yeah, I mean, total for the first round combined, I mean, we had, I think a total respondents between 1.0 and 1.1 of around 100. Unique respondents were in the 80s. Some people participated in both. The goal here is, to definitely to get in excess, of 100, so that there is enough bandwidth across, the different metrics and the different demographics to be able to give solid, statistically valid reporting back to the participants.
I see someone said someone did take you up on that. They say they're not a contractor. So we would certainly like anyone who deals with contractors, especially those ones in the heavy construction realm, such as CPA firms, to please pass this on and involve their clients. That would certainly be helpful. And I think it would also be helpful for them, for the clients to learn more about how they compare in these areas. Yvette, I know that since you have filled this out, can you share like how long it took you to do that?
Sure. So it took me just under 4 hours, about 3 hours and 40 minutes. And that was with the help of my fleet manager. He and I sat together for maybe about an hour and 15 minutes because I think that the fleet was a little bit more involved and I actually wanted to know a little bit more about the fleet. So I probably held it up because I asked him a lot of questions, but I did learn a lot about how we operate on the fleet side. So for me, it was a win-win.
And as we mentioned, even if you're not able to fill out all of the metrics, you can fill out, and we would certainly appreciate gathering any information that you can gather. I know some companies don't even have a work order system, so they couldn't answer that. But, definitely you can answer some of them. A lot of the financial ones come directly off of your financial statements and are pretty easy to do. So.
I
And
think
again, there are some of the metrics, and I know in the chat appreciate some of the feedback that, some folks may not have the work order system to support, especially in that fleet and ops area. But, we can give you some suggestions or tips of how to gather some of the metrics without having that. Certainly, if we're asking for number of work orders, things like that, then obviously those are ones that you would need to skip, but there's still value in completing the balance. Anybody have anything else they want to add?
I might be able to add a little bit of insight for the participants. So in the first, iteration of the comparator, I was not able to answer about 8 or 9 questions. This year, I did all of them except for one. We did do some improvements on our end from the comparator to be able to answer them and to be able to track some items, but us reducing the number of metrics actually helped that as well. So the survey did get simpler.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Like if you did start out and try to do it last time and found that you ran into a lot of roadblocks, definitely try again because we have done a lot to make it easier.
Great. Sue, I think we are about wrapped up here. If you have any other, info or closing comments for our attendees, we really thank everybody for attending and participating.
All right, thanks, Carol, Tim, and Rich, and the Heavy Equipment Comparator team behind the scenes for putting together this important presentation for everyone working in the heavy construction industry. I hope folks on the webinar will participate in the survey. And the team here is passionate about their efforts, and they're a great team to work with. If you have their contact information on the slides, and you can always reach out to them directly if you think of something later. Maybe something will come up tomorrow, and you may want to reach out. They're a great group to work with. Everyone, please wait about 15 to 20 minutes to complete the session evaluation. Our new system needs a little time to write back the activity, and we want to make sure that your certificates are accurate before you download them. Just a couple things coming up at CFMA on October 27th. We have our Basics of Construction Accounting program. If it's not for you, then maybe someone on your staff could take advantage of that. And coming up in November 11th starts our Accounting and Reporting Certificate program. You can find out more about this and our other education programs on our website at cfma.org/upcoming education. Thanks again for joining us, and have a great rest of your day.
Bye, everyone.
See ya.
Thank you.
Take care.